The marketing landscape is shifting faster than anyone predicted. The old maps don't work. And the brands that are winning aren't following a better playbook, they're pioneering on without one. This is Brandistry Buzz, a podcast for marketers who are ready for whatever comes next. I'm Nate Challen, brand strategist, marketing executive, and someone who's spent 3 decades helping brands navigate uncertain territories. Each week, we'll take one idea, in marketing, leadership, or innovation, and follow it through until it's actually useful. Real examples, honest takes, clear recommendations. So let's buzz! So I want to start with the week I was on set in Los Angeles shooting a national ad campaign with Guy Fieri, before we'd actually finished even signing his contract. That's not a slip, cameras were rolling, and the ink still wasn't dry. And in fact, we had shot another spot just 3 days earlier in New Jersey in case things didn't work out. And honestly, that 1 week tells you almost everything about how we relaunched Rolaids. Moving fast, betting on instinct, hedging every single bet because there was never enough time to be sure of anything. We pulled off something that looked impossible, and we still got it wrong. So this episode is about why. It's about the difference between being fast and being agile. Because I promise you, those are not the same things. So let me go back to where this started. November 5th, 2012, our Senior Vice President of Marketing, John Stroud, walks into my office and tells me we're about to buy the Rolaids brand from Johnson & Johnson, and he wants me to lead the relaunch. I was excited, a little bit nervous too. New category for me, a chance to bring a famous brand back, and a big, visible project at a company where I was still kind of the new guy. What I didn't know was that over the next 2 years, I'd learn more about managing a brand than at almost any other point in my career, and I'd learned most of it the hard way. Here's the thing about Rolaids. It had this incredible history. If you had heartburn, you knew Rolaids. There was the campaign, ROLAIDS, spells relief. There was the Rolaids Relief Man Award, which was given out each year to the best closer in Major League Baseball. Even the product was distinctive, mint tablets in a roll, which tied right back to the Rolaids name. But by the time we bought it, the brand had been off the shelf for 2 years, pulled into the same quality troubles J&J was dealing with around the time I left the company. And even before that recall, its share had been sliding for a decade. Now, companies buy and sell brands all the time, but this deal was unusual because we weren't buying a business. There was no inventory, no distribution, no sales. On paper, we were buying a trademark. But really, we were paying for the memory, for what people still felt about the brand. And that memory was the first thing we forgot. So here was the clock, 9 months from closing the deal to getting product back on the shelf. And that was a deliberate choice. We had a narrow window in the fall where we could walk into the retail buyer with an unbudgeted way to lift their sales that year. And let's be honest, their bonus. But we had to be early enough so that we're not colliding with their Christmas programs. That one decision set the pace for everything after it. We sprinted the whole way. And look, we did a lot. 17 new products, tablets, new liquid, 3 strengths, different flavors and sizes of each, a new brand identity, custom packaging, 2 new ad campaigns, all at light speed. We sold that lineup to nearly every major retailer in the country, even winning over the buyers who weren't sure the brand was still needed. The sell-in went so well that we doubled our volume estimate just to lock in supply and support. And that brings me back to the Guy Fieri week. We wanted him for the campaign, but the first problem was our executives didn't know who he was, and they balked at the cost. So just getting alignment inside our own building became its own project. We still hadn't signed him when the shoot arrived, so we shot the backup spots in New Jersey the same week we shot with Guy in LA, just in case the deal fell through. As I said before, we didn't finalize his contract until we were already on set. In fact, the only reason it worked out was he happened to have a few extra days that he could stay in LA after he finished shooting another show. That week was a window into the whole 9 months. Fast, instinct, hedge everything because there's no time to be sure. And then the launch landed, and that's when the real learning started. So what went wrong? Here's the first hard lesson. Our own research had told us something we didn't want to hear, that in the mind of the shopper, Rolaids and Tums were basically interchangeable, highly substitutable. But we knew we had the better product, at least on paper. A Rolaids tablet neutralized about 50% more stomach acid than the same size of Tums, which it turned out mattered way less than we'd hoped. Tums might not knock out as much acid, it was still effective enough, and Tums was everywhere. In the weeks right before our relaunch, Tums ran a multi-pack deal and loaded up everybody's pantry. So the shoppers we were counting on, they'd already stocked up. Tums used their scale to undercut us before we even got going. So we underestimated the competition, and we also mistook a distinctive feature for a relevant one. We had a real difference, it just wasn't a difference the shopper cared enough about. And it got worse from there, because in the race to launch, we walked away from most of what else made the brand distinctive in the first place. We changed nearly everything, the product, the packaging, the pricing, the campaign, because we figured we could do it better. Think about that. We brought Rolaids for its brand, and then we treated it like a trademark. And moving that fast, we had little time to validate any of it. We went a lot with our guts, and when the numbers came in soft, we felt the reflux. We tried to course correct just as fast, but we changed so many things at once we couldn't tell which changes were doing the most damage. So we ended up changing almost everything again. If I could do it all over again, once we committed to that timeline, I'd have changed as little as possible from what had been in the market before, and saved the improvements for after we actually understood the core of the brand. So there was a second mistake, and it's a sneaky one. We ran the playbook that had always worked at Chatham. Low-cost television, focus on Walmart, Walgreens, and CVS. That playbook had won for us over and over again on other brands in less competitive categories. But Rolaids was already famous, so buying more cheap awareness didn't do much. And Tums wasn't the only 900-pound gorilla in that aisle. Prilosec and Zantac could also outspend us on TV and on shelf without blinking. Our go-to retailers, that's exactly where all those competitors were strongest. So the playbook wasn't wrong. It worked great for other brands in our portfolio like Icy Hot and Cortisone 10. It just wasn't right for Rolaids. And here's the cruelest part. Our own best work made it worse. We had sold the relaunch so well internally to our retailers that we raised the bar right over our own heads. So when the brand underperformed, it underperformed against expectations we had set in front of every retailer who believed us and every stakeholder in the building. Rolaids became the thing that Sanofi executives pointed at when they went looking for Chatham's first real stumble since the acquisition. And the wild thing is, our pace through it all was generally impressive. That was supposed to be the advantage. But we'd been fast at too many of the wrong things. A playbook built for other categories, fighting Tums on the shelves Tums already owned, changing everything without understanding any of it. And here's what really gets me. A year earlier, when I arrived on Gold Bond, I'd stopped everything to ask the one question, what makes this brand unmistakable? On Rolaids, I was moving too fast to ask it. Speed with no strategic center is not agility. Okay, so that's the hard half. The next 2 years taught me the other half. We did pivot back to the historical product and packaging, but the bigger shift was strategic. We stopped acting like a category leader Rolaids was no longer, and we started operating like the challenger it actually was. So instead of fighting Tums where Tums was strongest, we went after its weaknesses: social media, convenience stores, the grocery aisle, rolls, while they were bigger in bottles. And we made a bet that didn't look like a healthcare bet at all. We partnered with the WWE to change how younger audiences saw the brand. The interesting thing about the heartburn category is nobody wants to use their parents' heartburn medicine. It makes them feel old. So we went to where younger audiences were with a different brand, and we lifted purchase intent through that partnership 7 points against the competition. It was still fast, but now the speed was focused through strategy, not just execution. By the time I left the brand at the end of 2015, Rolaids had become the #1 brand in convenience, growing its share across all channels every single month. Rolaids never became what we first promised, but it gave me a lesson I've carried into every fast-moving project since. If you handed me a relaunch like that tomorrow, here's 6 things I'd do differently. Number 1, find the core before you touch anything. Ask what makes the brand unmistakable and get an honest answer before you change a single thing. On Gold Bond, I did that. On Rolaids, I didn't, and the difference showed up in the results. Number 2, change as little as possible at launch. When you're moving fast, every change is a variable you can't isolate later. Protect the equity you paid for. Save the improvements for after you understand what's working. Number 3, Separate distinctive from relevant. A feature can be genuinely better and still not move your shopper at all. So test whether your advantage actually changes a decision, not just whether it's true. Number 4, don't bring your old playbook to a new category. The model that wins when you're dominant can lose when you're the challenger. Match the plan to the fight in front of you, not the one you've already won. Number 5, set expectations you can clear. Enthusiasm is what sells the relaunch internally, but every promise you make becomes a bar you have to clear, so raise it only as high as the strategy can actually reach. And finally, earn the right to move fast. Speed is only an advantage once you know the direction. Get the center right first, then go as fast as you want. So here's where I land. Agility is not just being fast, it's fast around a strategic core. Because speed without that core doesn't just fail to help you, it actually carries you in the wrong direction. And the better you execute, the worse you actually miss. And what still stings a little is that I sensed the core mattered when I got to Goal Bond, and I just didn't really get it, not deep down, until Rolaids made me learn it the hard way. Agility is not about measuring twice for every cut, but it's also not about swinging the blade as fast as you can. So, are you ready? That's it for this week's Brandistry Buzz. One more idea to help you navigate whatever comes next. If this episode made you think, subscribe wherever you're listening so you don't miss what's next. And come find me on LinkedIn where I'm posting between episodes, trends, takes, and the occasional things that I'm still figuring out. Prefer to read? Brandistry Buzz is also a weekly newsletter on LinkedIn and Substack. Links are in the show notes. I'll be back next week. In the meantime, stay ready.